The day has finally come. Run 8 Studios has released its first new route for version 3, the Union Pacific Roseville Subdivision. Considered by some to be one of the most treacherous railroads to traverse in the country. Leading trains through Donner Pass is not for the faint of heart. Steep grades, tight curves, extreme winters, and heavy trains are all part of the experience. But how does it feel to cross the Sierra Nevadas in Run 8? Let's all go and see if we can make it through the pass in version 3. Originally built by the Central Pacific and part of the original Transcontinental Railroad, Run 8 Studios' Roseville Subdivision stretches approximately 155 miles from Roseville, California to Reno, Nevada. This route traverses through the famous Donner Pass, with J.R. Davis Yard humping cars at the west end and Sparks Yard flat switching on the east end. A good variety of trains traverse this route, everything from Unit, Intermodal, Manifest, and even the California Zephyr. There are industries in the cities at each end of the railroad, but most of the route is end-to-end running. This means there are less locals on this route compared to other regions, but the beauty of the pass definitely makes up for it. The highlight of this route is its scenery. The Roseville Sub is by far the most beautiful route that Run 8 has ever developed. Unlike in previous routes, there are not many reused assets. There's quite a few new scenery assets in here specific for the route. Yard offices, towers, the snow sheds, etc. Some of the new buildings are even detailed on the inside with little Easter eggs like maps and train orders. This adds a nice little touch and makes the route feel more real. I'm not sure when to pin an era on this route. The trench in Reno would put it past 2009, but there are other things that would put it in the late 90s. Regardless, both Union Pacific and Southern Pacific rolling stock fit right at home here. The Roseville Sub is absolutely gorgeous, but she does have some imperfections in her scenery and her track. To name a few scenery issues, many of the automatic signals do not have number or G plates. I'm also not very thrilled with the way some of the rapids in the Truckee River look. They feel very two-dimensional, almost as if they were solid plastic just placed onto the landscape. I'm definitely not a Roseville Sub expert, but in my research of the route, it seems some tracks are either laid incorrectly or they never existed, period. As stated earlier in the review, the route seems to be in multiple errors, so it is hard to say exactly what's right and what's wrong. There seems to be many issues with the yard at Roseville. For example, the bowl is nowhere near the size that it should be, and a lot of tracks and yard leads seem like they're laid incorrectly or missing. I also checked 3 different track charts from 1993, 2005, and 2022. In those charts, I could not find a reference of the sidings at Midas, Hinton, or Donner. I think one of the biggest weaknesses with the route's looks is its snow accumulation. Snowfall can sometimes be very patchy, especially where tiles meet, and the foliage on the route does not have snow textures. I also find it a little odd to find snow falling inside of tunnels and snow sheds. Donner Pass sees some of the most extreme winter storms in the country, and the sim does not fully represent that. With that said, I would have loved to seen some of the snow removal equipment, like flangers and spreaders, and maybe even the Snowfighter GP38s that are winterized especially for the pass. I think I speak for everyone where I would even be willing to pay more for them as a separate package or an inclusion in the route. You can simulate flangers by putting a caboose behind 2 GP40s, but it's not the same. Even though the snow that accumulates on the tracks in the sim is not plowable, it would be amazing to send a flanger up the pass leading the charge while trains follow behind it through the storm. The Roseville Sub shows you how far the Run 8 team has come from their humble beginnings. 10 years ago, all we had was a single subdivision, a single locomotive, and a handful of cars. Now we see the beginning of the 4th region in Run 8. And while NorCal doesn't have the same amount of industries, or maybe not the same distance as the other regions, the operations on the Roseville Sub are unlike any other. I'm going to go ahead and give you guys the all clear to pick up the Union Pacific Roseville Subdivision for Run 8. If this route is a sign of what's to come, our future is bright. I'm going to give this route a rating of 89%. Until next time, switches lined, double checked, highball!